Going live. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for being here. Good morning to those of us in the US, and good afternoon to others joining across the globe from Scotland to Brazil and beyond. We appreciate you being here for our panel on global kitchens, local communities, how public restaurants shape urban life. My name is Alexina Cather, and I am the Director of Policy and Special Projects at Wellness in the Schools and co-chair of the advisory board at the Hunter College New York City Food Policy Center.
Morning, everyone. I'm Ray Gomes. I'm the Executive Director of Community Kitchen. I'm so excited to co-moderate alongside Alexina for this very important conversation and exploring how public restaurants from Brazil to Scotland and right here in the US in New York City are redefining food access, affordability, and dignity. And we want to thank Hunter College, New York City Food Policy Center for hosting this event. Thank you so much.
In a world where eating out is often seen as a privilege, today's panel asks, who gets to dine with dignity? And how can public restaurants function not just as places to eat, but as community anchors and what sociologists call third spaces, where people can connect, organize, and reclaim food as a human right?
We'll hear from our amazing panelists doing groundbreaking work around the world, building models that treat food as a public good and not a commodity. We'll explore questions of design, funding, scale, social impact, because this is more about just meals. It's about justice, joy, and of course, community resilience. Just a note, if you are joining here and you're an English speaker, please go to the bottom of your Zoom and click English. If you are joining from Brazil, you can hit Brazil so you can hear the Portuguese translation. We are bilingual today, so we got to work with the tech. So today we have Mark Bittman, who is the founder and board president of Community Kitchen. We have Abigail McCall, project officer of North Scotland. And we have Emmanuel Cardoso, director of popular food units in the city of Belo Horizonte. Awesome. Emmanuel, can you join us on camera?
She may still be having some technical. Oh, there we go.
Oi, pessoal. Eu tive probleminha no computador.
Hello, everyone. I had a problem with my computer. I did not have a camera. I was trying to reach you with the camera on my cell phone. I did manage to do that, but at least we have the audio. We can speak via audio.
No problem. Thank you. Thank you for your efforts. All right, let's kick off with some questions. Public dining can mean many things across cultures and systems. How do each of you define a public restaurant in your context, and what role does it play in ensuring food is treated as a public good?
Shall I start with that one? Yeah. So I suppose speaking from the work that Nourish is doing on public diners, how we've been defining public restaurants is that they're state-supported restaurants in the same way that we have state-supported libraries, public healthcare, public education, public parks. We recognize that there's a gap when it comes to public provision, public infrastructure for food. And yes, food is very personal, but that is always a private individual responsibility is something that public restaurants, I suppose, doesn't quite go against, but says this is a public good. This is something that that the state has a responsibility to make sure everybody has universal quality access to, just in the same way that it's done or tried to do for water and healthcare and education. So we've really been trying to build this, I suppose, as the missing piece of a piece of public infrastructure for food.
I would say for us, state-supported public restaurants is a goal and ideal and something that we talk about, but it's an impracticality in the United States at this point, since we barely have state-supported education and healthcare. So we are launching Community Kitchen funded entirely by philanthropy and by a tiered payment system where wealthy people pay more than people who are not wealthy. And the goal is simply to get really good food into the hands of people who have trouble getting it. And by really good food, we mean food that's well sourced and well handled and well cooked and made available, made accessible to everyone. Um, I think short term, we're obviously performing a public service, or we believe we're performing a public service, but long term, the goal is to say good food is a universal right that should be state supported. So we are in the same realm as everybody else. Um, we're just lagging behind in terms of realistically expecting state support.
Eu acredito também, complementando,
I also believe,
que
and
os
to
restaurantes
complement what you
públicos,
just said,
eles
that
cumprir um
public
papel
restaurants
muito
is where
similar aos
that
direitos
is the
ao acesso à
community
alimentação sem
restaurants are
ferimentos.
good for
Então, vem
everyone,
realmente
and
para
they
dentro da
have
população
we
a
have to provide
possibilidade
quality,
de acessar um
and
direito,
people have the
então é
right
muito
to
junto, né?
access to
A
a
construção
right.
desses equipamentos públicos
The
para
implementation of
trazer,
those
né,
public
realmente o
facilities is
atingir esse
important
objetivo, que é o
because
acesso à alimentação
our ultimate goal
adequada e
is
saudável,
the universal
com
access
equipamentos
to
e de
this
fato,
good.
aqui no
These
Brasil a
are
gente
um,
tem um avanço,
assets that
né,
in
diferente do meu
Brazil
colega, mas a gente tem um
also
avanço nessa
showed some
nessa
advance,
estruturação desses
some
restaurantes
progress
públicos.
in the
E eu acho que eles vêm
and
nesse
these
encontro, né,
public
para possibilitar
service
realmente o acesso à alimentação
eateries
como um
are
direito.
really a right that people have to access.
Thank you all for sharing that. And I know we come from different spaces and the funding systems are all different. A little bit more, I want to hear a little bit more about what you think it takes both structurally and culturally for dining out to be affordable, inclusive, and dignified in each of your spaces. Like Mark, you said that obviously it's funded by philanthropy, and we're hoping that the government will pick that up. But what do you think that will take?
One thing we've learned from the Trump administration is that change can happen very, very quickly. So it's not necessarily positive, but abrupt. So it's hard to say whether we're looking at something that could happen in 3, 5 years or 30, 50 years. It's just impossible to know. I think the example of community kitchen, if we're successful, we'll be able to say that community kitchens can be established again through philanthropy around the country, and that's imaginable in the foreseeable future. And then the argument becomes stronger that, look, this is a model that works. This is serving people. This is making a difference in the public health world, and we should be able to gain data about that as there are more operations like Community Kitchen. And it makes sense for government to support this. But obviously, we need a government that's capable of doing progressive public policy before we can think about that. But we can imagine it being funded by municipal governments, and that could even happen in New York in a year. We can imagine it being sustained or enabled by state governments, and we could imagine that in New York in the near future. So when there's a Department of Food in the United States that acknowledges that good food is a right of everyone who lives here, that's a huge step, and we don't know when we can expect that. But I think some government support is feasible within the next few years.
Yeah, if I could jump in on the sort of, I suppose, more culturally, what needs to happen. I think what we've been working on for the past decade at Nourish is what does the right to food actually look like in practice? And one part of that is, yes, it needs to be in domestic legislation, but the other part is that we need to feel we have the right to food in the same way that, we feel we have the right to education, and we even, we probably feel we have the right to remain silent more than we have the right to food, and actually understanding what that means as a rights holder and how to hold that to account in food environments where it is more expensive and less convenient to eat the good stuff. So it's really having that sense that we all have the right to food and then being able to action that. And I think public restaurants is one of the strongest ways to action that. It's not the only way, it's part of a bigger suite of things to get the right to food delivered, but it is one very clear, actionable delivery mechanism of the right to food.
Thank you both.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Ray.
Emmanuel,
Estou aqui pensando e acompanhando
I was
também.
thinking here, and I was listening. I believe that the role of the government for the establishment of these restaurants should make it a public policy. So when we talk about having all that included in legislation, here in Brazil, we have some legislation from 1993. We have a system that makes it mandatory for the state, for the government to ensure enough food for the population. So this legislation is very important for the implementation of these public restaurants. This will help to distribute meals in a very humane form. Because we have much inequality in our country. We have the solidarity kitchens that are operated by groups of civil society, and we have the community kitchens that are also managed by members of the public. And within urban areas mainly. So the access to a meal, the affordable price, and the easy way to obtain the meals. This has to have the support of the government that should invest in these public policies.
Thank you, Emmanuel. We learned recently that Brazil is, and I'm sorry, I meant to look at this really quickly, but you all have been taken off of a list around high food insecurity recently, and I believe that the popular restaurants were a part of that. Can you talk a little bit about that, and what specific when popular restaurants were started in Brazil, what specific problems were you all working to address? And I'm assuming it's going to be the high food insecurity, but if there are other things that you want to speak to, please do.
Então, de fato,
in fact,
this is
there's
a list that we call the map
we
of hunger,
it's in the form
in
of a
which
map,
people are
and
characterized according
people
to
are
their severe
put into
level of
the
food
different
insecurity, so extreme
categories.
hunger.
There's a group of indigent people that are really experiencing hunger.
I lost her audio. I'm sorry.
Oh, no sound.
Not hearing Emmanuel's audio.
I muted one of the ones because I think it was, yeah, one needs to unmute and the other one needs to, because I think she's on two things. Can you hear us, Emmanuel?
Sim, escuto.
Oh, okay.
Yes, I can hear
Yes, I can
you.
hear you
That
now.
was, yeah, sorry, that was me. I thought it was because it was echoing.
Yeah, houve probleminha aqui com técnico.
Então, a gente sai
So
desse estágio onde a gente não
we
tinha
come out of this
So we
situation
are
in which we
leaving that
didn't have
stage where
investments
we
in
did
public
not have
policy
any
to
investment
access to
for
food.
people who
And
vulnerable
this
people
puts us
to
in a
have access
position in
to
which
food.
today
And
we
today we are
have
in a situation
people
where we
that
have
are facing
Oh,
groups
food
of
sorry.
people in
insecurity.
the situation of.
Perdão.
We're done. Sorry. I think both interpreters are doing it at once. I think that's the problem.
Oh, I'm sorry. Oh,
It's
okay.
okay. You all are just really wonderful
Oh,
and helpful. So,
okay.
who's gonna go, Mauricia or Priscilla?
I am taking over, Priscilla.
Okay, thank you.
Então, de fato, a
So
gente sai deste lugar
we leave this
em
situation
detrimento ao esforço que o
in
governo faz
which,
com as políticas
because of
públicas
the
de acesso
efforts that
a
we had
alimentos
around
em
public
restaurantes
policies,
populares,
access
sem
to
dúvida
food.
dessas.
So the popular
A gente
restaurants,
não tem
we
como mensurar, né, um
we
estudo
don't really have a
quantificando
way of
essa
measuring
contribuição
how
do
big its
acesso a
contribution
restaurantes
was
populares
in
para
terms of the popular restaurants
fortalecer
helping
a saída, favorecer a
strengthen
saída
the exit of that list
do Brasil do mapa da fome,
from Brazil
mas
leaving the map of hunger.
a gente sabe que é
But we
realmente de
know that
fundamental
it
importância,
is
né? Hoje em Belo
extremely
Horizonte
important.
são
Today in Belo
atendidas
Horizonte, we serve
são, né, atendidas cerca de 10.500
10
refeições dia
we serve
nas
about
4 unidades funcionais
10,500
que
meals a
o
day in the 5
município
different units that the municipality
tem.
runs.
E o restaurante
And
popular, ele
the
surge
popular
na década de
restaurant,
90
it was born in the
com
90s
objetivo
with the
de olhar
goal
principalmente para
of
os
looking
trabalhadores
at the
que muitas das vezes
workers
não
that
tinham
many times
acesso,
didn't
né,
have
a uma
access
refeição
to meals
tão adequada e precisavam
that were
se
adequate
manter,
and needed
né,
to maintain themselves and nourish
se
themselves
alimentando para poder conseguir fazer os
to
seus
be able to
trabalhos
do the work that they were
e
doing.
com essa expectativa
And with this
mesmo do
expectation,
governo que é
the
de acabar com a fome.
government was trying to
E com
really
essa
end hunger. So
estratégia,
this is how it was born as a part of this
então,
strategy.
ele vem dentro da
And so
expectativa
it arrives within this
de acabar com a
expectation of
fome da
ending hunger
população
in the population.
e vem e nasce aqui em Belo
And
Horizonte,
it's
né?
born here in
Belo
Belo
Horizonte é
Horizonte.
pioneira
Belo
na
Horizonte is a
política de
pioneer
restaurantes
in the public
populares,
policy of popular restaurants.
com seu nascimento em 93.
In
A primeira
1993,
unidade
with the
ela foi
first
inaugurada
unit
em
being
94,
inaugurated
então
in
são 31
1994.
anos
So
que
we
a
have
gente tem essa
31
unidade
years of
funcionando
this unit
sem
running
parar.
nonstop.
E com isso
And
a
with this,
gente conseguiu se
we
estabelecer
were able to establish
enquanto
ourselves
modelo,
as a
mas
model.
de fato, trabalhando dentro da política
But
pública,
working
percebe-se a
within public
importância
policy, we
que é a
see the
manutenção
importance of
desses
the
restaurantes
maintenance of
para a
these
população,
restaurants for the population,
principalmente aquela população que de
especially
fato
the
não tem
population
acesso a
that does not have
refeições,
access
né,
to
a
high
população em
quality
situação de rua
meals,
não tem
people,
condição,
unhoused
infelizmente, de
populations, and
as
other
suas refeições
populations that
garantidas ao longo do
aren't able
dia.
to secure their meals
Então,
throughout a day. So
é muito importante a
it's
gente
very
poder
important to
ter sido estabelecido dessa
have
forma
established
que
this
ele
in
vem
this
crescendo,
way
né,
and
ao longo
see this
desses
growth
31 anos de
over the last
monitoramento,
31 years
para
in such an important way so that
atender
we can actually meet this demand that's so clear.
Thank you. And thanks everyone for sticking in while we work out some of the technical difficulties. We're so glad that Emmanuel can be with us and we have our translation services here. Mark, I want to turn to you a little bit. You said that everyone has the right to good food. And so that's not even just the right to food, which we all know we don't have in this country, although Maine is trying to establish that constitutional right. What does it mean to have good food in a public kitchen context? And how do we ensure it isn't just food for survival, but also for joy and connection?
I just wanted to say, I raised my hand just
Okay,
before
sorry, I
you
missed that.
called on me, but and I will answer that
You
question,
have
of
the
course.
floor, both. You can do
I
both.
just wanted to say that Brazil has been the model that all of us have looked toward for the last 10 or 15 years since I at least started thinking about this, and whenever anyone asks, where is someone doing this, the answer is always Belo Horizonte. So thank you for that great work and for establishing that precedent for all of us to follow. Um, so what's good food? That's the question. I mean, we've defined it. We think of 5 pillars when we think of good food, and they're pretty simply explained. The first is well sourced. So we want to deal with farmers who are practicing agroecological principles, farmers who are treating the land and their workers ethically. Um, we want to make sure that everybody involved in handling that food, from the person planting the seed to the person washing the dishes, is treated well, that is, with respect and paid a living wage. We want that food to be nutritious and healthy and well balanced. Wholesome is a word that could be used in this context. And then we want it to be accessible, because if it's just all of those first three things can be achieved by anybody with money in any of our countries, but making that food accessible is obviously a very important part. And we want it to be, at least in the case of restaurants, served in a communal atmosphere where there is community, where people of different backgrounds and different present situations mix with each other, which is something that's not happening enough in our society. It's very easy to see the United States as a place that's polarized, not just politically, but economically. Rich people go about their business without interacting with poor people except as workers, and poor people can go days without interacting with rich people. Um, but also important that people of different backgrounds, that people who speak different languages and so on, are able to interact with each other around food. We know that food has the power to bring joy and to build community and to even have a role in building health, not just from nutrition, but from the social network that we can build around food. So all of those things, we're aiming to make all of those things a part of Community Kitchen. And I know that other people who are working on public restaurants have similar, if not the same, goals.
I think this model is especially critical in everywhere, but in the US, especially with SNAP benefits not allowing for a nourishing hot meal and that being a privilege here. So excited to see how the community kitchen model can address that. Is the restaurant meals program something that's going to play in there, or is the sliding scale going to account for people on a limited income just being able to pay what they can?
The sliding scale is going to make it so that regardless of people's income or status in terms of SNAP or anything else, people will be able to get great affordable meals at Community Kitchen. Obviously, we're limited. We're opening as a 35-seat restaurant. We're opening 4 nights a week. We're only piloting 3 months. So obviously, it's very limited, our ability to actually have an impact. But in the States, we are the first model that's tackling all of these things at once. So we should be able to learn something, and we should be able to say something as a result.
Absolutely.
Thank you. I'll add really quickly, because I'm the executive director, that we were looking into the SNAP hot meals program. And so we've connected with those folks. And so for the long-term restaurant, we definitely want to see how we can integrate that as well.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Back to being the moderator. Abigail, can you define a little bit, we've been using this term right to food quite a bit, and there is an international standard for the right to food, and obviously there's a standard within Scotland. I don't know if you can speak too much to the international standard, but if you can, that would be great. But specifically, if you can talk about the right to food framework as it applies in Scotland, and what as a legal and a moral obligation, and how that translates to to the design of the public dining spaces.
Yeah, I can definitely give it my best go. because I think it's something that we continually come up against here in the Scottish context, because it has been an ongoing debate of how to bring the right to food into domestic Scots law. And I mean, going back to the kind of fundamentals of it, food is such a fundamental human need and right, almost so fundamental that it's overlooked and often misunderstood. It's not The right to food is not that the government hands out a certain amount of calories to each person. It's that it enables a food environment where people can choose for themselves the food that's going to keep them well, the planet well, keep the people that made it well. It's about creating that actual food environment where people can get good food for themselves. So thinking about how that actually works in practice is slightly more complex. If we look at the broader sort of UK context, what we've seen, especially post-COVID, has been the rise of food banks, which I think originally were kind of heralded as a like, yes, we're doing something for, this is something that's good. It's handing out food. And Nourish as an organization sort of did, I think it's fair to say, looked at it quite skeptically from the beginning and said, if we shouldn't be celebrating an emergency response. There shouldn't be the need for something like food banks if we lived in a food environment where people were able to be able to decide the food that they wanted. So our sort of work on the right to food here in Scotland did start with that building of consensus around the need to end food banks. But then obviously looking at it as it was a sort of necessary emergency response. So what's the exit strategy? How do you get out of that? Yes, you have the legislation, but you also need the infrastructure that's capable of adding actual places to the food environment that put a guarantee on people always being able to get the food that they want and need. So where we're at with getting the right to food into Scots law, in 2020, the Good Food Nation bill passed in Scotland, which was the UK's first national food plan. Our intention and what we were lobbying for was for the right to food to be incorporated via that piece of legislation. Unfortunately, it wasn't. So it's been put into a new human rights bill that was dropped last year, but has since been picked back up. And I think there's always a bit of sort of like hesitation around that thing of, well, if there is the right to food in legislation and we live in a food environment where it is currently cheaper and easier to eat bad things and it's difficult to get good food, then what's the responsibility on the state? So our kind of approach to getting public diners and public restaurants in Scotland has been to say, well, look, you're going to have a duty to deliver the right to food. This is a very clear way of doing that, as well as, a smart investment in public health, given that we're spending in the billions on the cost of poor diets. So I think the right to food is it's a real reality that's going to happen in Scotland, but we're kind of trying to do these two things at the same time, of getting it legally incorporated at the same time as we have the infrastructure that means it's going to be able to be sort of meaningful when it gets here, if that makes sense.
Meaningful and increasing agency, right? So not just looking to increase an emergency food network that's full of food pantries and food banks, and which certainly have a place, but investing more in models where people can choose what they want to eat. I want to just step away a little bit about that conversation and talk a little bit about beyond feeding people. Public restaurants can serve as vital third spaces, so places where people gather, connect, and build social cohesion. How have you seen this function play out in your work? Emmanuel, you could speak to how it's played out in your work, and then maybe Abigail and Mark could talk about how they hope it plays out.
Então, esses equipamentos públicos,
These public
a gente vive
facilities
que oferta mais do que refeição para o público.
supply more than meals
Por
to the
tornar-se
public,
equipamentos de espaços de
because
convivência
they
mesmo,
become
de troca,
facilities for
de socialização
people
mesmo.
to socialize,
E
to
para além da
um,
refeição servida,
exchange ideas and so forth. And
são
in
espaços para
addition to the
educação e
meal that is
desenvolvimento integral,
served, those
com a
spaces
parceria com
are spaces of cultural events with partnerships with um, other partners. And for instance, you can see people offering to cut somebody's hair because that person does not have enough money to go to the hair salon, and help with vaccination, participation in campaigns against diseases. There's a variety of um, initiatives and actions that we implement in the practice, because we know that those spaces are not just for meals, but we want to see more benefits for the people, not just to go to the restaurant. So these spaces, these facilities are supposed to promote access to education, health, and leisure activities, so that is very pleasing, and it's a differentiated activity. In December, we have a Christmas celebrations, and we offer lunch for all the residents, and we also distribute toys for children. We use that space also for children to play. In my opinion, those spaces bring up a lot of things, amenities to the local residents, and it's very nice to see that these facilities go beyond the supply of food.
Thank you, Emmanuel. Abigail or Mark, thoughts on your models?
Yeah, I can jump in. I think for us, what we've been doing as an organization for the past 3 years is to try and build some kind of co-production process that brings people into already the design of these spaces. So not just lobbying for this as a policy, but actually beginning that design process of things down to where they should be, how they should be. And one sort of, I think, strong thing that keeps coming through, we do have quite a lot of sort of community charitable meals that are happening, which are super great social connectors. And I think public diners will be the kind of infrastructure that can also support that. But lots of people have said it will be completely radical and powerful to just have a restaurant that you can go to comfortably all the time. And as Mark said earlier, food is on its own, done well and accessible, is a powerful sharing and connector. And I think that building these places with people at the center will, be enough to create those social fabrics, because it's something that we just really don't have. There is a real gap in these spaces. There is like a very identifiable gap between set menus or meal deals at a supermarket, that sort of in between place. So building these as those places. And I think for all that, that is wrong with places like McDonald's, I imagine these public restaurants as taking those places as being places that people do feel comfortable, and they are on the high streets, and they are there, and they are places though that you can get a good meal at a low price, and you can spark up a conversation with someone. So yeah, I think it's really about doing the food well and putting people at the center of the design of the space.
Mark, you want to add anything?
It's hard for me. It's hard to know what the ideal situation will look like when we finally develop it. What we're doing at Community Kitchen is trying to do, really quite elaborate, really good, interesting food. Almost what people call special occasion dining in the States. But I think in the long run, what we want to see are public restaurants that serve menu del dia, straightforward, good food, well sourced, really well done. Um, and I think it's funny because we've been bad mouthing McDonald's, of course, for 50 years and with good reason. But as Abigail said, it's a place where people can go and feel comfortable and safe and get some food for a reasonable price. And that particular model is something that we need to be looking towards in the long run, not how are we duplicating McDonald's, how are we replacing McDonald's?
Yeah, and Ray, you could take off your moderator hat for a second and weigh in here because I have a follow-up question about that. Like, what are you doing possibly different in terms of training to have it be the mindset also that it is a restaurant for everyone and it's not, I mean, yes, it is catered to those possibly who can't afford to eat at any restaurant, but you're not saying this is a low income restaurant. It's a restaurant that invites everybody. And so how are you expressing that in terms of the culture at the restaurant and training and all of that mindset?
Yeah, I mean, because we're doing a pilot, it's such a great space to like sit in and be like, we're testing it out, right? But it is such an exercise in class and classism and to see what it would be like to say that this is a restaurant for the people in the community and everybody is welcomed, right? And so in terms of training, what we want to focus on with our staff and the folks that are interfacing with diners that they understand the values that are driving community kitchen and that they're able to express those values, right? So it's like why these prices, why this food, why this, why, but they're able to explain the five pillars that Mark highlighted. And basically just say like, well, what would it look like for you to understand the farmer, right? And to have material around the restaurant where people can get to know the farmer, they can get to know the food, they can get to know the people who are bringing the food into the city. And then, hopefully vice versa, right? And the farmers can get to know diners and aggregators and everyone know and see each other and in that way advocate for each other. So it's really putting a different kind of spin on dining where there's the veil between folks within the food system gets broken, right? That we're all able to kind of see each other in this way and hopefully again advocate for each other in ways that we need to, knowing how unjust our food system is. Okay, moderator hat back on.
All right, I'll pass it to you for the next question then. Thank you.
Sure. Um, I want to change things up a little bit. So, um, on that sort of vein around farmers and local agriculture, what had to shift, if anything, within the infrastructure in your countries and in your towns and your cities in order to get local produce into the public dining spaces?
I mean, I'll go first on this because it's a simple answer for us. We don't have the demand at this point to overstress the local supply of food in the New York area. So for us to source locally a community kitchen, um, it's 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 not just a matter of backing up the Cisco truck to our loading dock, but it's not all that complicated. There are um, scores of local farmers producing great food, and the infrastructure is there to get that food to us. If there were 100 community kitchens operating in the New York area, then we'd have an infrastructure issue. But at the moment, we don't. So there's kind of an opportunity for these kinds of for demand and supply to grow in concert in our area. There's not really an oversupply at this point, but at the same time, there's enough to meet demand. So we're lucky in that particular way.
I mean, I'm really interested to hear from Emmanuel about this because I know the local supply um, ways of working from speaking with your colleague is such an interesting model, and it's something that we've been trying to work on and look at more in Scotland. I think for us, going back to what Mark was saying before about what is good food, it's that in these places it models better. And one crucial element of that is that these places do create multiple routes to market for local suppliers. So they have to be able to take on multiple different local suppliers. And that's something that we are currently trying to work out how it's going to be possible. We have a prototype in Dundee and in Nottingham that will start next year. And likewise, I think it will be a good testing ground to see how these can set better standards around local procurement and then how that can be replicated throughout the country when hopefully they are rolled out on a more national scale.
Então, a
So,
demanda, né, pelos produtos da
uh,
agricultura
the
familiar,
demand for
ela é grande,
familiar
ela
uh,
é,
agriculture, farming,
ela é vista como muito
there's a lot of
importante,
demand,
né,
and
pelos
it's very
equipamentos
important.
públicos.
We
E a
have
gente
the
tem
public
uma
infrastructure,
oferta muito
and
interessante. A gente
we
tem
have
muitos
also
produtores
um,
que ofertam
supply,
esses
enough
alimentos e
supply.
que
There are
querem, né, a grande
farmers
sede, né,
that
acessar esse
supply
mercado
those
que são os
products, and they
restaurantes.
want to have access
Então, mas
to
eu
those
digo que
markets,
mais uma
the
vez, né,
restaurants.
quem estruturou
But
isso, quem
once
estabeleceu
again,
isso, de
in
forma a
order to
beneficiar
establish
tanto
all of
os
that
produtores
and
como
to
também os
benefit
públicos, é
both
através de
the
políticas
farmers
públicas
and
institucionais. Nós temos o
the
programa
public restaurants, we
de
have
aquisição dos
to have
alimentos da
programs.
agricultura
We
familiar,
have a program
que é
for
um programa que o
procurement
governo
for
estabelece
the
para favorecer,
acquisition
né,
of
esses
those
produtores
products
e
to
que
benefit
permite a
those
compra
farmers, and
por
that
meio de compras
allows
públicas dos
for
produtos da
the
agricultura familiar.
call
Então,
for
hoje, esses
bids
produtos
to
acessam os
sell
restaurantes
those products.
populares
These products
por
reach the
meio desse programa.
public
Então,
restaurants or
os restaurantes
restaurantes
recebem
populares
produtos,
in Brazil,
principalmente
and
hortifruti,
they
dependendo
receive
do tipo de agricultura familiar.
all those
E de uma forma inovadora para Belo
horticultural
Horizonte, nós
products,
estamos planejando
and we
a
are planning
aquisição de produtos da
to
agricultura familiar com recurso
buy
próprio do município.
products from
Esse
family
programa,
farming with the
a
support of
aquisição de
the
alimentos da agricultura
municipality.
familiar por meio
So we can
dessa doação
buy
que é
the
feita, né, que é a
means
compra dos
to
agricultores junto com as
make it
instituições, como os
possible
restaurantes
uh,
populares,
from the municipalities. The
é um
popular
recurso
restaurants
financeiro que vem
are
do
a
próprio governo
financial
federal.
means also that comes
E
from
nós
the
queremos
federal
trazer,
government. And we
por meio
also
também
want
desse
to
programa, ter
buy
uma outra
through this
modalidade que
program
permite a aquisição de
uh,
produtos da agricultura familiar
through
com recurso
another
do governo municipal.
model,
Então, a gente vai
a
ter a aquisição de produtos
a
que
system
são
to
mais
buy products
regionais. Então,
at
se
the
lá na
regional
cultura
level.
mineira de Belo
They are,
Horizontina,
for
a
instance,
gente
in
vai
Minas
inserir produtos
Gerais,
de
we will
produtores da
buy
agricultura
regional
familiar
local
para
products, and we will
favorecer
uh,
os cardápios
seek these
das
local
unidades com
farmers,
produtos que
and the
são da
menus
cultura
will
regional.
feature products that
Então,
are
a
part
gente
of
tem essa
our regional
expectativa aí de
culture.
nos próximos
So all
meses
that is a
para
participative
dar lançamento a essas obras públicas para
effort.
conseguir adquirir
We
no
are
próximo
going
ano
to
esses produtos diretos dos
make
agricultores familiares.
these
Então, é um investimento
calls
forte, não só
uh,
na política dos
for
restaurantes
bids for
populares, mas
the
de outras
supply
políticas
of
do
those
município que estão
products,
atreladas à segurança
not just
alimentar,
for the
que fortalece
public
os
restaurants,
alimentos de
but for
bases
all the
orgânicas,
supply chain
agroecológicas,
that
e a gente
uh,
quer cada
pr-
vez mais
supply those products,
fortalecer e tomar conta dessa
be it
responsabilidade enquanto
organic
município também
produce or
de
other products.
fomentar essa política pública
So
de
this
agricultura
public
familiar.
policy that benefits family farming will be very important.
Thank you all so much. We have a few more questions and then we will shift to getting some questions from the audience. One of my final questions for you all is I would love to hear what one thing you wish policymakers, funders, or the public, or all three, better understood about public dining.
I can do this.
Vai, Mark.
Go, Mark.
Eu ia
Okay.
dizer que eu espero
I was gonna
muito
say that
que
I
haja
hope very much that
entendimento
people understand,
em relação
have
à
greater
importância que é
comprehension
para a
about the
população
importance that this has to the
equipamentos
population,
públicos.
that these public
Então, de
tools
entender que
have
não
for the
é um
population. So to
assistencialismo,
understand that this
que
isn't
é
charity,
uma obrigação do
this is an
Estado de
obligation that the
realmente
state has to
fazer com que essas políticas
really
públicas sejam
ensure that these
implementadas
public
para
policies be
garantir um direito
implemented
humano à
to
alimentação adequada.
guarantee
Então,
the
acho que é
basic
ver
human right
a
of
oferta de
access to adequate
refeições
food.
para a
So it's
população,
to
entendeu?
make
De se olhar
available
com um olhar
these meals
que não um olhar assistencialista.
with that
Vai,
perspective and
Mark,
not with a charity
desculpe.
perspective.
It's almost impossible to say anything other than here to that, because that is the answer. When I first started working on Community Kitchen, I don't know how many times I had to say to people, I'm not talking about starting a soup kitchen. I'm not talking about starting a food pantry. I'm talking about trying to show that access to real good food is everybody's right. And um, you, we, those of us on this panel at least, often get put in the position of acting as if we're either trying to supplant the emergency food system or shortcut or shortchange the emergency food system or somehow join the emergency food system. And none of those things is the case. We recognize the need right now for the emergency food system. And of course, it's impossible to not support that need, that understanding that it needs to exist. But we have to be able to show, as Emmanuel just said, that is the obligation of government long term to make sure that people living in our countries eat well. It's not only an obligation, it's a smart economic decision, it's a smart public health decision, it's a smart environmental decision. All of those things are true, and our goal is to make that vision be more widely understood.
Yeah, I mean, it's not a cop-out answer, but I do just want to, yeah, essentially echo all of that. I mean, it's been the biggest challenge for us here is to come away from this being seen as another response to food insecurity. I think there was a newspaper article that read these kitchens are going to put food into the mouths of deprived people. And it's just trying to say, no, this is public infrastructure that probably should have always been there alongside other things, that this is a right, and that this is going to be something that means that we don't have that need for emergency food provision in the first place.
Thank you all. This is just so lovely to hear. It's like music to my ears. There was an article that came out a couple of days ago, and it talked about pay what you can restaurants across Mexico City. I don't know if folks had a chance to see it, but essentially the concept is that restaurants that are not public restaurants open a couple days in the month as a sort of public restaurant, and they would offer folks the same quality, the same amount of food in a pay what you can model. What do you think about that as something that could be possibly replicable for non-public restaurants? Do you feel like that is a good model for general restaurants to have? I mean, the particular purpose of that one is so that in gentrified communities, folks can have access to the food that are the new sort of Michelin star restaurants that are popping up. So if it is that, you know, towns can't necessarily have public restaurants, do you think that this is a good alternative?
I think from my perspective, and I think here in the UK, there is, I don't think there's a similar kind of restaurants doing pay what you feel, but there are a lot of community meals that do pay what you feel. And I think increasingly they are being leaned on as emergency food responses, but their essential function, I mean, there's always been community meals, whether that's for religious, cultural, social purposes. So I think that if there's a way to, gain access to good food and be in company, then it's not a problem. When we're looking at public restaurants, I think we often say you don't pay what you feel to on a bus. And if once it reaches that stage, like it's sort of for us looking at how other public infrastructure works. And I think it would be, yeah, it would be that you wouldn't pay what you feel. And I think it was in a workshop last week, we were speaking with one of the operators of milk bars in Poland, which are a type of public restaurant. And I asked him about pay what you feel, and he did like do a slight laugh and say, well, that just wouldn't go down here because people, yeah, I don't know. I think there's a place for it. I don't think as a public restaurant, but yeah.
Eu também ia dizer que
I was also
eu
gonna
não sei se,
say that I don't
se
know
na prática, né,
if in
realmente
practice
funcionaria
this would
dessa
work
forma. Eu acredito
in
que
this
não,
way.
assim.
I don't
Eu
think
acho
so.
que outras
I
vias, como os
think
restaurantes
other
populares,
channels
comida
like
com
the
preço
popular
mais
restaurants,
acessível,
more
acho que
affordable
tem
food, I think
a chance de dar mais
there's a
certo do que
chance
pague
of
por comer.
those working better than the
Eu
pay what you
acredito
can model.
que aqui também em
I
Belo
think
Horizonte eu
that
não
here in
vejo
Belo
nenhum
Horizonte, I
desses
really don't
similar,
see any similar
mas é
models like
algo que
this in Belo
precisaria de ser muito
Horizonte,
bem estudado
but
para
it would have
entender
to
se
be well
realmente
studied to
teria uma
understand
funcionalidade e
if there
atingiria de
would be a
fato os
functionality and if it would
objetivos.
actually reach its objective.
Mark, any last thoughts on that before we move on?
I'm sorry, I sort of missed the last five
Oh, no,
minutes.
that's fine. No worries. We know you have a lot going on.
Just ridiculous.
Opening a restaurant, right? We heard. No problem. We just, I mean, on that note, I coming to kind of my last question, I do want to acknowledge that this is really hard work. You all are doing innovative models. You're having to constantly explain the model to whether it's to politicians, to the public, to those in need. And so I'm wondering right now, what is giving you hope right now in this movement towards more just and communal ways of eating? And if one of you don't have it, hopefully you can get that hope from somebody else's answer.
I mean, as I said before, we were inspired by the work in Brazil. I was there 7 or 8 years ago and saw it. So there's that. The fact that we did, we built this. We did build this, and we are opening in a couple of weeks. And there's nothing for us not to be hopeful about. We are optimistic and joyful and engaged in our work and in building a team and bonding almost as a family. And there's really, it's an up every day. It really is. It's great. It's what I mean, I didn't know what to expect, but if someone had said, this is what it's going to look like, I would have been even more eager to build it. So I think back about, I was just thinking about Abigail and I started talking during COVID actually, and I think back on our first contact when Community Kitchen was a dream and Nourish was 3 or 4 years younger in its development, and just how how interesting and fun it's been to think, yes, this is an international movement and we're all trying to make it happen on local levels, and it's totally cool.
Yeah, I'm sorry, a big storm has rolled in, so if I cut out, that is what's going on. But just to say, I think it's worth saying that there are examples, like as we're hearing in Brazil, but there are also newer examples of public restaurants that are opening. It just is yet to be called and named as, I think, public restaurants as infrastructure. In Turkey, they began in 2018. We have them in India. And there are day by day, there are, I think, I think there's the realization that this is a piece of public infrastructure that is quite common sense, for lack of a better word. And I also want to just echo that I think since making the links here and just doing stuff like this and pulling it together and trying to spotlight this as public infrastructure for the right to food has been so powerful. So in the Scottish context, I mean, we thought it'd be 10 years before we opened any of them. We've had, I think, what is called a mass civil society movement and political uptake that has resulted in 2 prototypes that are going to be open next year. So I think it's something that people can grab onto as saying, yes, wait, we should already have this. I feel it in my kind of, heart and soul that this feels right to a lot of people quite easily. So I think that has given me a lot of hope. Yeah.
And Emmanuel, what keeps you going? You've been doing this work.
Tempo.
O que me dá esperança é
What gives me hope
realmente
is
ver que é possível,
to see that it's
então o que
possible.
faz eu continuar na caminhada
That's what keeps
de
us going
fato os
on this
objetivos têm
road,
sido
to see that
atingidos
these objectives are
e
being met
que a população que
and that the
realmente, né,
population
tem
that
necessidade, né,
needs
de
this
acessar
uh,
essa
needs
alimentação,
to access this
consegue fazê-lo no seu
food is
dia.
able to do
E o
so
fato
in
da
their
gente
day
estar
to day.
conseguindo ver
And the fact that we're able to see
outras
other
vivências também, né?
experiences.
Então, compartilhar com
So to
vocês, com
share
as
with
outras
you all
tantas,
and to
é muito
have this
importante conhecer
exchange
o
and this
outro,
space
o
is
novo,
very
e até
important to
poder
get to
inovar
know each
no dia a
other
dia,
and
né?
to
Como há
innovate
tantos
with
anos
each other,
vem
something
acontecendo.
that
Então,
has been
acho que é
happening
isso que
for so
mantém
long, and that this
vivo,
keeps us
né?
going,
A
this keeps it
intensidade, a
alive, the
vontade
intensity and
de
the
fazer
will
cada vez
to keep
mais
doing more
com esses
each
equipamentos
day
públicos.
through these public spaces.
Amazing. Thank you so much. I'm just very touched. We've been having meetings. I realize I didn't say this, but we've been having meetings for the past, I guess, couple of months, calling ourselves like the international group of public restaurants and hoping, we'll work towards a conference at some point, bringing together all the advocates and all the folks around the world doing this beautiful work. Partners in Mexico, of course, Brazil, Scotland, Poland, as Abigail mentioned, and we have partners in Netherlands that, unfortunately couldn't make it today. They are very serious about their vacation time. We need to learn from them. But we're just so excited about talking and building and learning more. I've already learned so much from you all, not only from this panel, but from the meetings that we've been having. And so really look forward to continue doing that. We have a couple of questions from the audience. So it's coming very fast and furious. Um, so let's see. Thanks for all the thanks, everyone. Um, let's see. I did see one sort of exuberant person. Okay, how will you accomplish this? I guess this is mostly to us for Community Kitchen. How will you accomplish this with the current administration relying solely on philanthropists? Question mark.
Well, for the time being, yes, relying solely on philanthropists. We do have a very progressive mayoral candidate who might have influence on what things look like in New York a year from now, and that's something we can be hopeful about. But look, at the beginning, it was difficult to convince people that community kitchen could be real, and so therefore difficult to raise money. But we think that we are real now, and we think it'll be easier to raise money, and we will also have income from running the restaurant. So the financial model is shifting, and there's reason to be optimistic about it. We'll know much more in 3 months, of course.
Awesome. Alexina, you want to pick a question or you want me to keep going?
Pick a question, any question. There are a lot coming through. A follow-up question, and then Marianne, you had a few. I know we'll move on to some other panelists, but I think this piggybacks on the model in the US. And she's asking, how will you tell the difference between a person, family who needs the service versus someone who doesn't?
Uh, we're letting people, we're doing a no questions asked policy. Um, Obviously, people who need our support are going to get it, and people who are lying about needing our support are going to get it also. But we're assuming there aren't going to be too many of the latter. There are questions about dignity and questions about interactions between humans that are just so complicated. We've had so many questions, conversations about these things. But ultimately, the idea is to get great food into the hands of people. And if people are underpaying for that great food, that's part of our mission also. Our goal is to provide as many great meals to as many people who need them as possible, and we're hoping and assuming that people who can afford it will pay a fair price or even more for these meals.
Yeah. Go ahead, Abigail.
Yeah, I just wanted to jump in because it's a question we get quite a lot. And I think, at least for us in the context of lobbying for it as public infrastructure, is that we wouldn't differentiate between the two. We are mostly modeling the payment scheme off how public transport works. So yes, there are subsidy mechanisms to support different groups, concessions, students over 65, people currently struggling financially, but it is a service that is for everyone. It's not just because you're down and out that you ride the bus. It's because it makes sense. And you might still have a car, but use it for efficiency. So I think it's, for us, we definitely have the principle of universality, that it's open to everyone, but that there are these mechanisms that can enable everybody to access it.
Thank you. Mark, you had your hand up. You wanted to say
I
something?
mean, I just want to say that ultimately that's what we all want is regardless of who you are, regardless of income, here's a great meal. If you can afford more than what we're charging and you want to give us some money, awesome, but no questions asked.
Wait, real quick. I think one more question is why not just create more soup kitchens? And I want to hear from the panelists, but I think a big piece of this model is to create agency and the experience of being able to eat at a restaurant just like everybody else, not go to a place that the food is designated, this is what you get, and you don't get upset. So having a little bit more agency, dignity, and that just experience of a third space and not just a space for those labeled as in need, but for everybody. Again, that interaction between people who might be very wealthy and could eat at anywhere that they want, but they choose to support this model and have conversations with people that they don't often get to interact with, and that dynamic, spark that occurs from that type of model rather than just designating it a soup kitchen and a place where people go and have no agency. But I'll let you all weigh in there.
So the question was, why not just have more soup kitchens?
I mean, I'd actually rather have Ray answer this question than me, but given that we have these roles here, we're not interested in providing people with emergency nutrition that comes from charity and is often the leftovers of the food that those people who have money can eat. So probably all heard the expression government cheese, and we're not interested in serving government cheese. We're not interested in serving government food. There's a big question of dignity here and of the kind of food that we're providing and offering. And I think that distinction needs to be made over and over again.
Yeah.
Ray, you may have something to say.
The only thing I'll add, and I can definitely talk a lot about this if I've written a lot about this. Emergency food is a band-aid. There are many, many resources, and I think a lot of the times when people ask these questions, they're not aware of how many resources there are allocated in the city, especially in New York. There's a database that is run by Why Hunger. I invite you all to look at it. It has different categories: soup kitchens, food pantries, food banks. It has all these different categories of what is available in an area at any given time, and they update it very regularly, just so you can see in a 5 mile radius what resources are available for folks if they need that service. And so, what I always say is that we don't need to replicate these services. We can actually connect folks to those services because they are there and they are available. And because emergency food and that model is not and has not reduced food insecurity, we're working through a model that is doing something differently. And so, while we are supportive of the vast ways that people approach this issue, this is the way that we're approaching it. So there was a question about volunteers. It was mostly directed at Community Kitchen, but I would love for Abigail and Emmanuel to weigh in as well. What is the role, if any, that volunteers play in your public restaurant? And if they don't play a role, why?
Aqui a gente não tem o trabalho de voluntários nos
In my country, we
restaurantes.
don't have
A
a
gente
volunteer
trabalha com
work
uma
in the
equipe
restaurants.
terceirizada
We work with a
e
specialized team.
eu acho que talvez até pelo
I think
a adoção desse modelo foi
that because
mais
the adoption of
até
this
para se
model
ter uma proximidade maior
aimed to get closer to
com
the
as práticas, né, de manipulação dos
community and
alimentos,
the
enfim. Então, essas
practical
pessoas,
sides
né,
of
já estão qualificadas
food
com aquele
supply.
objetivo,
There are
vamos assim
people who
dizer.
are hired
E os
to
voluntários a
work
gente
with that
não, a gente, né, o
goal.
trabalho dentro da
We don't
cozinha, ele exige muitos
necessarily
aspectos
use
relacionados
volunteers
com a higiene
because the work in
sanitária.
a
Então, até por isso
kitchen
que a gente
has
adota
several aspects,
um outro
including
modelo
sanitary
de modelos mais práticos, né? A
regulations,
gente trabalha com os
health
voluntários, por
regulations.
exemplo,
So
quando a
we
gente faz o
only
almoço de
work with
Natal,
volunteers when we
mas
hold an
aí
event
não
like a
dentro da cozinha,
Christmas
né? Aí a gente
lunch,
oferecemos
but they don't touch anything in the
presentes, ajudando
kitchen.
as pessoas com
What
algumas
they will do
mobilidades
is to
se
distribute
deslocar,
presents and
o
toys
assento,
and
enfim. Então,
organize
trabalhar
the
dessa forma.
seats, that type of thing.
And just to kind of echo that,
E
we in
só para
the
fazer eco das suas.
oh, sorry, is this being translated? Sorry, I had another echo back. But I think from speaking with people, the sort of landed position has been no, it wouldn't be volunteers, because one of the big draw cards for something like public restaurants is that they set better standards around the food on the plate, but also the working practices that they uphold. So they have to pay workers well and set better standards on working conditions also. So I think that has been something that has come out quite strongly in the sort of consultation that we've been doing with people.
We've said we want to treat everybody like professionals, and that usually means paying them. And we haven't really used volunteers up until now, although I have said to some people recently, go out into the neighborhood and tell people about community kitchen if you want to do something. But since part of our model is demonstrating that workers in the food system need to be treated with dignity, respect, and good wages, we're not looking for volunteers to work directly in the restaurant.
Thank you. I think this question would probably be directed, oh, it's hopping around, sorry, active chat, mostly to Emmanuel, since it's been happening already in Brazil. But how do you address the potential conflicts of interest if community restaurants are run and regulated by government? But anyone, I think, can weigh in on that one.
Conflitos de interesse.
Conflitos de interesse?
Interest conflicts.
Teria que saber melhor.
Or conflict of interest. I would like to know what you mean by conflict of interest.
Eric, if you want to follow up in the chat about what you're thinking about the potential conflict of interest. I'm not sure if you mean competition.
Que acha sobre a concorrência, se é algo operado pelo governo. Desculpe. I'm sorry about the interference of the channel.
No, thank you. It's okay. He followed up with saying potential corruption.
I mean, I would say the system could be hardly more corrupt than it is now. So what we'll worry about that when the time comes. But yeah, again, to use Abigail's example of public transport, it's imperfect, but it's certainly better than it would be if it were privately run, more beneficial.
I'd let anyone, Emmanuel, weigh in too, but I just certainly think, again, Ray touched upon this a little bit before, but right now, the models of the emergency food system, any other models that we have still aren't meeting the need, right? We have rising rates of food insecurity. And what's that quote that I always forget? But not that have good be the enemy of perfection or vice versa, how they say it, right? It's a model, it's something innovative, it's new. Currently, we don't have a perfect model, so hope for the best. Ray, do you want to maybe pick one more question? I think we have one time for one more question, and then thank everyone.
Sure. Just weighing through a lot of things. Yeah, some of them are a little redundant in what we already spoke about.
We may have covered everything too.
You may have. I think what will be really lovely to hear from each and every one on the panel, if there's a question that you wish we asked, if you want to answer something or you feel like it's very important for folks to know something in particular about the work that you do or how you hope that this work will affect change within your city and your country. If you just want to go around and answer your own question really and truly, like what would you want everyone to know about the work that you're doing?
I'll say we we are often asked to define what success will look like for us, and I think the fact that we've gotten this far makes us successful already. We're looking forward to opening and to seeing what happens, but our long-term goal is really to help build this movement and to help other people in similar efforts. And regardless of what happens with our 3-month pilot, we've energized ourselves and others around this public restaurant idea, and that makes us successful already.
Yeah, I think for me, one thing that didn't quite come up, but that I'm super passionate about in relation to public restaurants and the concept and the coming of public restaurants is that it's also about getting more democracy into the food system. Like the food system is currently the place where we probably have the least public control, even though it's so fundamental of a human right. It's probably the place where we should have the most public control. So that this is a way for democracy to enter into the food environment more strongly, where we can be citizens, not just consumers. And also just to say that, like, this is big. You know, when I first heard of it, I thought, oh, like, nice idea, but this is big. This is on par with the rise and spread of public education, public healthcare, public transport. So I'm hopeful that it feels big and that it comes with a lot of success, a lot more justice, and a lot more democracy.
Eu não tenho, acho que tudo que foi dito aqui, eu acho que demonstrou muito. Eu fiquei muito feliz de compartilhar.
I was
A
very happy with
experiência
everything that
de
was shared here
poder
today, and
conhecer o
even
trabalho de
happier
vocês,
to get
Marco,
to
de
know
Gabi.
everyone's work. Mark,
É,
Abigail,
depois quero aprofundar
I'd
mais nas
like to
leituras sobre o que
deepen
vocês
my
desenvolvem
understanding of the work you're
para
doing,
beber mesmo
and so that I
dessas
can
experiências tão interessantes, assim,
learn
que
from
vocês
these super
vivenciam no país de
interesting
vocês. Então,
experiences that you're having in your
só
countries.
agradeço.
So all I have to do is to thank you for this space.
Thank you so much, Emmanuel.
Muito obrigada.
um, Brazil is sort of newer to the fold. Definitely not to the work. And I can't wait to visit. So I'll just put in a plug for that. um, so just to let folks know, Community Kitchen is launching in mid-September. Please sign up on our website, communitykitchen.us, so that you can keep up to date on when we are going to be open to the public. We partnered with Lower East Side Girls Club. It's on 8th Street and Avenue D. I believe the entrance will be on 7th Street. So we are hard at work, hard at work with the finishing touches. Looking forward to welcoming folks into the space. Mavis J is our chef. She is a James Beard award-winning chef. She's amazing. Her food is really wonderful. Everyone on staff are just wonderful professionals who are passionate about this work. Mark has been a wonderful partner in crime, and it's been a really lovely experience working with him, working with everyone. With this space, it's been super, super, super inspiring around international public restaurants. Um, and it was really, really great to partner with you, Alexina, on this. I hope we get to do more panels together because this was super fun. And, thank you to our interpreters, Maricia and Priscilla, for stepping in kind of in the last minute to ensure that Emmanuel was able to be present and understood. It means so, so much to us to be able to have her here, especially with the pioneering work that Brazil has done. And for our other partners in the Netherlands, we'll bring them on the next panel. We're so looking forward to building out this network. Hopefully having a conference, philanthropy sponsor us, and hoping that we can have more and more conversations on how to address these issues that we all are facing in different parts of the world. That commonality has really hit home for me, and everyone is so inspiring and so specific when they talk about this work and their approach to it. So thank you so much, Alexina.
Thank you all. Thanks, Abigail, Mark, and Emmanuel, and our interpreters. It seems like others are interested in more of this conversation, right? It's always a pleasure to work with you if it doesn't even feel like work. So I look forward to going to the restaurant. I hope everyone else does. Please subscribe to the center's newsletter for the next event. You can do that by going to the center's website, www.nycfoodpolicy.org, and we thank the Hunter College Food Policy Center for hosting this event. Everyone have a great rest of your day, great weekend, and take care. Thank you. Oh, and the recording will be available on the center's YouTube. We'll send out an email about that. Take care.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.